Cities, buildings falling down. Satellites come crashing down. Welcome to Overrated. It's your co-host Francis here, and that is a quote from Simple Minds, and we're discussing Scotland. Yes, again. This time we're chatting about Simple Minds as maybe overrated and Idlewild as maybe underrated. Two bands I held fondly and own pretty much all of their CDs, so it was a delight to chat about them finally. And also, Babs didn't really know much about Idlewild, so it's interesting to find out what she thought. You will find out yourself later. If you like Scottish music, we have other episodes covering bands like Primal Scream, Teenage Fan Club, and acts like Calvin Harris. So, enjoy this podcast.
Welcome to the Over Underrated podcast with Fran and Babs. Is it over or underrated?
Welcome to Over Underrated. It is another episode, another new month. I am Fran. I am here with my co-host Babs. How are you doing, Babs?
Hey, great! I'm doing very well, Fran, and I've just finished a documentary on Simple Minds, as you might be able to tell. So thank you for that recommendation.
And what is the subject matter? Why have you watched Simple Minds?
Well, Fran, we are here to not talk about a specific region of Scotland, I imagine, the whole country of Scotland. And
Southern Scotland.
We've done Southern Scotland already.
Oh, really?
Yes, that was the Calvin Harris and Frightened Rabbit. But I think Simple Minds are potentially overrated band are from Glasgow, and Idlewild are from Edinburgh or met in Edinburgh. So...
Yeah, I think they're a sort of band that they're not all from Edinburgh, but that's where they sort of like did their first gigs. So they're kind of like Block Party aren't from London really, but they are.
Yeah, exactly. Meeting at King's University, was it? Anyway,
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
another time. But yeah, so lots to talk about in this week's episode. But before we do, what have you been listening to this week?
Do you know Sam Fender?
I do know Sam Fender, and I saw that his album is getting very good reviews.
Yeah, it's actually quite surprising. So I've listened to it maybe twice, and it is quite restrained. It's kind of like low key. But it's interesting because I thought there's a lot of rumours that he will be headlining Glastonbury.
Already?
And if you're going to be playing like a big festival, you think he would want to have some bangers, and there's not many bangers on the album, but there's some beautiful moments. And I'm going to tell you that I cried when listening to the new single, Remember My Name.
Wow.
There may not be a lot of people on people's shoulders at Glastonbury, but there may be some people sobbing. So,
I mean, that's also what you want, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's emotional. But yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's his best album so far, but I've only listened to it a couple of times. Maybe because I was expecting a slightly different Sam Fender. It's more reserved, and he's come out saying, like many other musicians, that it's rigged in the music industry, and unless you're posh, it's really hard to break through, and only maybe less than 10% of working class people can get to his level. So,
well, I've been listening to the album of one of my fave bands of 2024, Alt Black Era, Rave Immortal, which is actually a bit more different than I thought it would be. I mean, the fact that it's called Rave Immortal, I didn't expect it to be as ravey, because they are kind of on the edge of both. I didn't expect it to be rockier, but I think it works really well. I think it's a really good record, and I picked Drummer's Girlfriend as my top track from them last year, but Run Rabbit Run is very addictive, so I would definitely recommend that. I've been listening to Who Let the Dogs Out by Lambrini Girls. I think they absolutely nailed it on this album, and just
is that a cover, or is that a different song?
No, that is the name of the album.
Okay.
It's very tongue-in-cheek. I mean, one of the songs is called Cuntology 101, and it's basically about how to be cunt, so you can... But I tell you what they have done, Fran, that I recommend anyone with an internet browser. They have done an exceptional, and I'm not joking, exceptional cover of Mambo No. 5 by Lou Bega, rocking it up. Like, they speed up the chorus. They're like, a little bit of Monica in my life, a little bit of... It's fantastic. And I think let's say the more mainstream artist that a lot of people are talking about, Doechii. It's not really my kind of music at all, but my gosh, the woman can perform music, and well, it's more than music. I think she's like a performance artist.
Overrated.
But yeah, you talked about working class heroes. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think we're going to start with the overrated band Simple Minds, who I did not know at all that, had working class backgrounds. So in this episode, Fran has made both the playlists because I believe these are two bands he very much likes. So Fran, take it away. Why did you choose Simple Minds and how did you put the playlist together?
Well, I guess it's overrated. So the fact that I like them makes me why we chose them. But I guess it's are they overrated? Not is the question, isn't it? And looking at the stats, they have sold 60 million, so they're up there with they get 9.1 million listens on Spotify, so they're still a big band. But I guess it's because for many people who are my age, they know just two songs,
Mm-mm.
which is "Don't You Forget About Me" and "Love and Cooking," and like I kind of knew that they were like popular, as in like they played stadiums, but I was always like, how come this band are playing stadiums? And I think by the time I got into them, was probably the late 90s, when a bit like when I got into Duran Duran, they hadn't had a hit for 7 years. They had many lineup changes, and they're kind of a bit of a joke because I think people sort of use them like you two, like, oh, they're one of those pompous 80s stadium bands.
Hmm.
And even if you buy like a best of from 1992, none of their first three albums, four albums, were even on the best of. So they have like a secret history because they were on a different label before they signed for Virgin in like 1982 or 1981 when they had the hits. And then you find out that the first three albums was regarded as one of the most experimental, coolest bands in the UK. And then the band we know about is when a lot of the fans kind of disowned them, which is around "Don't You Forget About Me." But then Jim Kerr kind of says in the documentary why. It's like he became a father, he needed to make some money, so he's like, fair enough. And then I'm like, and since then, they haven't made an amazing album since I guess the 80s, but it was just do enough. And I've seen them play live two or three times, and they've been fantastic. And like, although the first time I saw them live was in Bournemouth, and it's an all-seater venue, and it
Ooh.
was terrible. And I remember I was like, literally kept looking around for someone to stand up so I could join them. And I think we got to maybe halfway through the set when Speed of Love came on, and then there was enough people to stand for me to make the move. But I saw them last in 2018 in like an outside gig near London. And funny enough, the Pretenders were supporting them. This is quite interesting, knowing the history of the band.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
his ex-wife could still be supporting them. And they were literally, it was like a half full field near Crawley, and they were stunning. The new lineup, they got like a new drummer. I can't remember her name. Like a new like female drummer
Yep.
who's has loads of personality. The whole band keeps changing, and as he says in the documentary, people would probably want the original lineup, but by keeping changing the members, it keeps giving us, a new belief. It was a bit like James as well. James has got a similar thing. They keep bringing in younger members, and it vitalizes the band. And
Hmm.
definitely, they're in their 60s, and he can still perform and create a show. So, yeah. So the question is, are they overrated, and maybe showing off some songs that maybe the average person wouldn't have heard of? What are your thoughts, Simple Minds, before this?
Absolutely. So yeah, I feel like I probably heard "Don't You Forget About Me" on the radio as a child, and that was my in. Although I'd forgotten until was it the documentary or actually my mum owned Glittering Prize 81
Mm-hmm.
92. So that was knocking around, but my mum, kind of famously in our house, would always play the same songs. So I feel like I didn't go much beyond what were the radio hits when we listened to that album. I knew that they were Scottish. I knew that they were led by Jim Kerr. I knew that they used to sound a bit more post-punk. And like band-wise, that was about it. I knew that Jim Kerr had dated Patsy Kensit. I did not know actually that he was married to Chrissy Hind, and I did not know about his hotel in Taormina. And the letter from Jim Kerr that you get when you go to his hotel that's sent, I think, by him and his wife. I did not know, Fran. This is very important. How handsome Charlie Burchill is. Hello. What the hell? I mean, we all know about Jim and his feline eyes, as Mariella Frostrup was saying in the documentary. Of all people, that was a shock. So yeah, I feel like that was missed. So I feel like for a very long time, well, yeah, like most people, I knew the main hits. But at some point, I got round to listening to New Gold Dream 81, 82,
Mm.
83, 84. I'm still with 80s music going beyond the singles a little bit because in my household we didn't listen to that many 80s albums. And it's yeah, it's phenomenal. Like I think it's a kind of like almost no skips album. But going back to what I'd saved, I actually saved a bunch of stuff from other albums. I'd saved stuff from this playlist that I hadn't realized I'd saved. And yeah, I'd forgotten that I'd saved a song of theirs from 2022 called First You Jump, which I don't know if it came
Hmm.
from talking to you about their new album. So yeah, that's where I was going in. Like I presumed I didn't know how big a fan you were of their whole time. I presumed that you would be a fan of their kind of post-punky early stuff. But
Mm.
as I didn't know how much they'd evolved, I was like, are all the songs that Fran is putting on here to try and show really the whole thing, and does he like the whole of the Simple Minds discography or not? I don't know. So yes, curious to find out.
So let's start with I Travel. And I've chosen I Travel Live because, like a lot of bands from that era, a lot of them were singing like Bowie and Brian Ferry, and
Mm,
Jim Kerr's voice took a while to kind of like find itself. So this is from Empire's Dance 1980. And if you listen to the original, it stands out as like, wow, this is such a jump compared to other bands. Like it's it's just a four to the four dance post punk hit with like a George Moroder sort of backing and like beautiful guitars, and there's like kind of like a strange like vocal regarding like futuristic and chaotic. I think they'd just been on tour in Europe for the first time, so Jim could discuss Europe for the first time.
hmm
It's avant-garde and pop at the same time. But live, it does. I prefer Jim Kerr's delivery, and they can update the keyboard sounds, and
hmm
it just bangs. And yeah, I've been that the live album I used is I think in 2015 they decided to do all the first five albums
Yeah.
a tour to 5 and 5, so you get to
Yeah.
hear all these songs they hadn't played for like 20 30 years, and they've updated them. And yeah, I just think it's a brilliant song, and it's so sad that not many people have ever heard of I Travel. What are your thoughts?
So yeah, so this was one of the songs that I'd saved and forgotten about. And I'm glad that you explained why you chose the live version, because I have to say I actually prefer the studio version a bit more just because it sounds more angular. If I'm coming at this a bit cold, you hear the edges a bit more, which I enjoyed. Like on the live version, it took me a while to get on board, but when I got to the second listen, I felt kind of literally swayed by the rhythm of the traveling, and I enjoyed the talking on and the guitar solo. I was like, okay, this is unexpected. But yeah, I found that in the live version, he struggles a bit more with the higher notes. So I enjoyed going back to the original as well. And it's really interesting because I looked at the lyrics a bit more closely with Simple Minds, because a lot of people talk about it's Jim Kerr who writes the lyrics, but I thought the lyrics were very A-level European politics. Is what I've written. But I found this interesting quote. I don't know if you saw this quote from James Dean Bradfield about this album, because it's one of his favorite albums. And
Mm.
he said, "Oh, I've always liked records which are completely misinformed and displaced. Simple Minds were aware that they were Scottish and trying to shun it. That's why they tried to become really European, this dark, unemotive industrial band. I don't think the British look towards Europe in the rose-tinted way Americans do. Blah, 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 blah. The best bands manifest the lyrics into their music, and it really fucks me off when people don't realize that." And I was like, okay, it's strong emotions here. Um, but yeah, like quite a few songs on your playlist took me a while to warm up to. I think also they were quite long. I think the shortest song that you put on was 3 minutes 50. It may be, the songs that are radio hits for Simple Minds are so accessible. Alive and Kicking and Don't You Forget About Me. I think, yeah, maybe these ones need a little bit more time. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going back, rediscovering it basically.
It's quite funny that the Manics have been discussing bands they would never have mentioned back in 1991. Can you imagine the Manics of Future saying the like Simple Minds back in 1991? It would never
Yeah,
happen. So it's interesting all these like influences they're now happy to announce to everyone.
it's very interesting. So the documentary that Fran and I are talking about is the documentary that's on the iPlayer called Everything is Possible. And it charts, it basically goes from like the beginning of the 80s to the end of the 80s, and then it just jumps forward to like the present. And their newer manager is coming in saying, when he came in to manage Simple Minds, people were like, "Are you insane?" Like he said that people from the industry literally called him up to be like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he literally says, "But the songs," and then it just cuts to someone else. But I think you've always had your finger on the I was gonna say your finger on the prize. That's putting two idioms together.
The glittering prize.
Like there's a glitching prize 81, 92. I think you've always been spot on when you say that like the UK is just really, really bad at uh considering bands beyond the period where they were the most successful, and Simple Minds definitely seem to be one of those bands.
Definitely. And to go back to a non-successful single, I've picked the Changeling, and my favourite version, randomly, is on the John Peel session version. I paid like £30 for a box set back in the day.
Oh, lovely
and,
stuff.
And the main reason why I bought it is because they had an album which was supposed to come out in like 1997, and the record label refused to release it. It's called Our Secrets Are the Same. But randomly, they played it on a Spanish radio before it was dropped. So there's loads of bootlegs for it, and everyone had a version of it. So then they brought out a box set and they put the actual album on it. The album's just fine. But on it, I discovered loads of like old sessions. And yeah, this is the Changeling. This is from Real to Real. Is it Cacophony? I can't remember what it's called.
Cacophony.
The band released 2 albums in their first year, and they jumped sound-wise massively in 6 months because obviously they heard Joy Division and thought, yeah, we need to up a game. So they put out a more like German, darker, edgier album. And yeah, this piece is like, it's got the raw energy, it's got the experimental sounds, got that. See, it's interesting because like they say in that documentary, Charlie Birchall's got like his distinct sound, but does he? Because he's not at the edge. If you hear his guitar, you wouldn't know, oh, that's Charlie Birchall. But he's got a great ear for a guitar riff. But I don't know, because he does change his guitar playing quite like early on. He's doing quite angular riffs. Then he moves on to like slide guitar and big like acoustic sort of sound. So I don't really know if he has his own sound, but he's just got a great ear for melody.
Yeah. He's more like a chameleon, isn't he? Like.
But yeah, I know. I like Kerr's vocals in the more than studio version. So yeah, The Changeling. Had you heard it before?
Again, another song I saved back in the day and completely forgotten about. This one got me immediately. I love how the synths contrast with the guitars at the beginning. I love how the more ethereal guitar line comes in later, and the very sparse down in the club ending, angular post-punk, yes, please. But I do like, people keep going on about how this album especially is quite derivative, or like, oh, he's doing a crooner style voice sounding like Brian Ferry. And I'm like, I don't mind it. Maybe it's because I just don't know the era well enough. I'm like, I don't really care if he's doing the stuff. It's sometimes you get annoyed by it. I don't know why I'm not annoyed here. But yeah, I really like this song. Although once again, I was like, what are these lyrics? Like, just, I'm getting absolutely nothing from the lyrics at all so far.
Apart from Street Fighting Years, the band I've never ever engaged with lyrics.
Yeah.
I don't tend to ever. Sometimes you hear like a line and think, oh, actually, I want to hear that properly.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
With the band, I just take it on face value really. So, but here it's quite nice to have why he explained why he went political for that album, because he just had a divorce and he didn't want to talk about it. It's a nice distraction, because I think that album hurt him massively. Because everyone's like, oh, okay, you're talking about Mandela and you're talking about the troubles, blah blah blah. Similar to why people hate you too. But at the end, really did it for that album, as far as I know.
I just wanted to say that, like in doing the research, I came across a quote from our previous guest, Bob Stanley. He said of this album that it should be hailed as a singularly strong post-punk into synth pop bridge, but the shadow of Belfast Child looms over the legacy. So kind of a little bit what you said as well.
The fact that the album did fuck all in America.
Yeah.
To have a number 1 album in America, then the next album's just ignored completely. So this is the American from Sons of Fascination, Sister Calling. Yeah, I think this is when they started to take footsteps towards top of the pops for the first time. And yeah, this song one of the first. I think all the first 4 albums took me a while to get into. But yeah, it's just the American again. I mentioned Charlie Birchall's got an ear for catchy guitar hook. Again, with the krautrock influence, we've got like cryptic lyrics. I don't know why he's even talking about American or what American is.
Oh, it was inspired by the bright colors of an exhibition of modern American art that Kerr had seen.
Of course, you can tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that catchy chorus. And obviously when he sings it, I could have played a live version of this because it does sound better live. Because when you've got like 10,000 people singing America, America, American, but again, I think it's a lost classic. Just that we never hear this played on the radio. So I thought I'd introduce it to people. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad that I watched the documentary after listening to the songs because I was like, oh my God, it's like Fran has lined up half of this playlist at least with the songs that are on there, and it is used nicely. Yeah, this one I haven't written very much. I've written that I really like the bass, and I found it very interesting when someone in the documentary said that. I think it's the bassist who was on this song was like he was like Peter Hook, hit your heart out. You're so much better. I'm like, okay, like, can we not have both? Like, but I think with a lot of bands that I haven't paid much attention to as an adult. I sometimes don't realize how good the bass is, and the bass is great here. And by the second listen, I was chanting as well, Mary, I'm Mary. It still hasn't grabbed, like, a little bit similar to I Travel. I'm like, this is good, but I'm not wanting to rip my shirt off and sway
Yeah,
as one does. But I didn't dislike any song on your playlist at all. Yeah, this one I was like, it's good, but Theme for Great Cities would be my preferred one from
that
this
was
song.
that was on the that was on the playlist originally.
Oh, really? And you
I
changed
changed
it?
it to I travel because it's such a great opening. But I thought obviously your bassist
Yeah.
may enjoy the bass, but
Yeah, and I do,
yeah,
and
so
I do,
I changed it last minute.
and I do, and I do. But there we go.
A lot of Simple Minds fans adore Dirk Forbes, and when he left the band,
Okay, there it
they
goes.
were
Yeah.
heartbroken. Same as Mick McNeil, which is
Yeah.
interesting. But Mick McNeil wasn't even mentioned on the documentary, and he
Well,
like is the guy who wrote.
very briefly
But I
towards the
mean,
end.
it's
Yeah.
interesting that there's people who had no voice in the documentary at all,
Yeah.
and Mick. He basically co-wrote all their biggest hits. So it's quite sad that we didn't get to hear his point of
Yeah.
view. So moving on to New Gold Dream,
Hmm.
the seminal album. And here's a fact: I don't love the album. I
Whoop.
don't. I think it has 5 great songs on it, but for me it's got quite a lot of filler. Because I've been listening back to all the albums this week, and some days Street Fighting is my favourite album, but it works well as an entire piece of music. It hasn't got many like singles, I guess. So for me, it's usually Once Upon a Time is probably my favorite album by the band. But yeah, New God Dream, which is when they suddenly blended experimental Simple Minds with the pop sensibilities. It's got a beautiful, lush atmospheric sound, a great keyboard riff which comes in and out. It's quite funny because every decade he updates the lyrics to 91 or to naughty one, naughty two.
Hey.
Yeah, so now I wonder if I see him this year, if it'll be 21, 22, 23. Yeah, it's a mixing of dance and guitars. And, this is interesting because, I remember I've got a bootleg of him singing this with Bono. And to me, in 1982, the bands couldn't be further apart. Like, the earnest rock of U2, and then like the cool, shimmering keyboards of Simple Minds. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I've put quite a few songs on this remind me of U2, but I think it is the later ones.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because in this time, I mean, you never hear Bono going and U2 going near keyboard back in 1982. So
Yeah.
this is interesting because they brought out a live album in 1987. Called Live in the City, and the New Gold Dream version of that is slowed down.
Hmm.
So I didn't love it. So it took me a while to discover the original, to find out how fast it was in the original. So God knows why they bothered to slow it down. But yeah, it was around this time when Mel Gaynor joined the band, and this was like the classic lineup for a while. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is the first song I actually do know properly from this playlist. I have danced to this song in a warehouse
Really?
in industrial Brussels. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've talked about this club night, this dark wave club night before. And I remember being on this on the dance floor going 81, 82 with all this ragtag group of people, which is basically like, I don't know, students and old goths. It was great. But it had actually been a while since I'd heard this song or any songs from New Gold Dream. I don't know why. I'd even forgotten about that slow intro, which really sets the atmosphere, I think. And yeah, I agree with everything you say. Love the song, love chanting along with 81, 82. And yeah, it's interesting that you say that the album has 5 strong songs and the rest is filler. It is true that the hits are the hits are so obvious on this album. Someone somewhere promised you a miracle. Like you're happy to seek out those songs, but when you do put it on, without thinking, like I can very easily listen to the whole album through and have a great time and not want to skip at the same time. So
I like
yeah,
Hunter and Hunted a lot. It's a good song.
yeah.
But I'm not a fan of Promise Me a Miracle. I find it quite annoying.
What?
I don't-
Again. I feel like I'm doing like my Scooby-Doo voice, like,
Well, I know.
What?
I've always skipped Clipping Pride and Promise Me a Miracle.
I am shocked, shocked to
Do you
hear
know
this.
why? Because the chorus goes, "Shine on, shine a light for me." It reminds me
Oh,
of
and you don't like
Katrina.
lights?
It reminds me of Katrina and the Waves. The Eurovision song, and that's why I can't get over it.
I think we could have been here for 100 years, and I never would have made that connection. But the bass is so good, Fran. The bass is so good.
It is a good bass line.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering because I was like, would have expected to put Someone Somewhere or Promised You a Miracle as the representative of this album. So I was surprised they picked this song, but I was like, hey, I like it too.
And then I was battling between the Waterfront and the Speed of Love to Me for the stadium years. So I went for the Waterfront because I guess it's the bombasticness of it all. They said that they wanted to reach an audience. You can't have more stadium rock than the bass line for Waterfront, and then like the clash of the guitar and the keyboards of the down down down, which I said musically doesn't actually work, and it just for playing around with it. Suddenly, I thought, "Fuck it, let's go for it." But yeah, it's got that driving sound. It's got that amazing bass line. Those giant heavyweight champion of the world, Mel Gaynor drums. I was going to go for live, but I thought I can't put too many live tracks on here, so
I wouldn't mind it.
I went for the original. But yeah, and it's inspired by Jim Kerr thinking about Glasgow and the big sounds of the shipyard.
Yes, as we learned from the documentary as well, which is kind of funny because would you associate this song with Glasgow?
I don't know.
I mean, I do love, yeah, like, when we watched I don't know, yeah, you watched the Kraftwerk documentary where they talked a lot about that, about how, like, it's the sound of the trains and that's why Detroit really got into Kraftwerk. And I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of, I see the logic here, but at the same time, it's like, it's a bit more of a reach, I think, to get there. I actually find the bass quite droning on the song. But on kind of repeated listenings, I got like it hooked me with the rhythm and the percussive and keyboard flourishes. Yeah, like I said, the dun dun was quite good, although it ends quite abruptly. And yeah, it's really interesting. We haven't touched on it yet, but the fact that Simple Minds started and they were very kind of art schooly. And then as they were starting to break through, they realized, because sometimes it is just the record company pushing it, but they were like, no, we're going to become big. So now we need, to make a bigger sound. It is so funny because at the beginning of that documentary, their first record label, who were daring to try and make their sound more commercial and less angular, they pelted the record company guy's car with eggs and it had to be written off. So it's like within 6 years, they've gone from like, no, we want to sound edgy and angular to like, well, we're gonna be massive, so we're gonna have to make songs that are massive. And it's like, oh, if I think his name was Tarquin as well, like Tarquin Gosto or something. I have just watched the documentary, so it's on my mind. And even like on Wikipedia, talking about the change in musical direction for the song, they're like, lead singer Jim Kerr returned to a natural, unadorned facial and hairstyle as whatever they would have to say would be in the music. And I was like, what? What? So because he's not wearing as much eye makeup, like, then it's gonna make the sub. All right, okay. I don't really know what's going on here.
Yeah, I guess when you're a teenager, it is all about the style of music, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite funny because obviously after they had obviously Don't You Forget About Me, and they didn't want to do that single, then they eventually did it, and it made massive in America for a couple of years. But I didn't put it on the playlist because I thought most people would know.
But you put the other one, didn't you?
But I put on Alive and Kicking just because probably it's the best song, and it's the American album because of Jimmy Iovine. He comes across as an absolute prick.
Such a prick. My God, I wanted to punch him in the face. My God. What did he say? It's like, it's all about success. And if you don't get success, like, not you've lost, but something like that. And it's like, oh, shut up. Yeah.
But yeah, and so obviously the band had to change their ways because he wanted it to be able to be. He wanted a song like you play on an acoustic guitar, and obviously try playing like Waterfront, I guess, on an acoustic guitar. It doesn't not going to work. So it kind of changed the band's sound. So I guess it's less experimental, but it does. It is the album is massive and bombastic and melodic as fuck. And obviously they added like the backing vocals of a soul singer. So obviously that's going to be quite a change of style from the krautrock loving Glasgow boys. But I think I've first heard this on a Sky Sports Premier League montage.
Never underestimate football and football-related video games as a way to discover music. Yeah.
And obviously, Simple Minds are massive football fans, but yeah. So I remember it was players running down the tunnel to "Alive and Kicking," and then for "La La La La." I thought I like the sound of this motherfucker. So yeah, this is just it's a classic song. It's got great piano. So they moved away from keyboards and they've now got piano on the songs. They've all grown their hair. They've got videos of them on an island with like a helicopter flying around them. It's I can see
the mid '80s now.
It's a sound of capitalism. You can see why.
Yeah. Reagan has been in power for a while. Yeah.
So it's a great album, but you can see why people were put off by them in this sort of era. And tell you what, Simple Minds, for the size of the band, have probably the worst backcloth videos of any band in the '80s. For the band who are that big, their videos are fucking terrible. There's a video of them with like an eagle on his shoulder. I've got no idea why. It's like what. Seriously, how like Depeche Mode said their videos were terrible until they found Anton Corbijn. Simple Minds needed to find a visual person for them because their look is always terrible.
Yeah, see, unfortunately, I didn't have time to watch any music videos for this episode, but thankfully in the documentary they provided snippets of some, and yeah, I mean none of them are that memorable. I mean, I guess the Don't You Forget About Me, the angle where you kind of Jim Carrey's below. It's different, I suppose. But yeah, I have a big issue with one of the album covers that's coming up, which is insane. But yeah, I think Alive and Kicking is definitely an overplayed song, but it's an excellent song. The way that it starts with "You Turn Me On," almost isolated, you're like, wow, okay, you're setting the scene here. Like, we know what this is going to be about. I think his voices never sound smoother. I think the unexpected female backing vocalists sound amazing. There's a key change. There's a piano instrumental. It builds to euphoria. There's chanting at the end. Like, it shouldn't work, but it does. So yeah, as much as we want to punch Jimmy Iovine, or however you pronounce his name, in the face, you can't deny that he produced a good song. But I will share something with you that I don't think I've ever shared with anyone, which is that I don't know why, but when I was a kid and I would listen to the song, I would change the lyrics and I would change them to, the "what you gonna do," but I would change it to "what you gonna do when you do a big poo? What you gonna do when it goes down the loo?" And I have no idea why.
They were the original lyrics, I think, as well. If you hear a demo,
I think they would have had, a much bigger rapport with the kids. So so often when I'm hearing it, I hear, and also I would sing, and I mean, I was making it up. Instead of straight into your love, I'd put straight into new look. And I don't know why. And I don't really have that with many, there are songs occasionally where, you might add a harmony or something, or you mishear. I have no idea what was going on here. I have no idea how old I was, but I'm glad to have my mental health problems out there in the public. Thank you.
I mean, people say it's a bit cheeky that both "Don't You Forget About Me" and "Alive and Kicking" have a similar hook at the end with the la 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 la.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, well, no.
I don't mind it.
Come on. Kaiser Chiefs did "Na Na Na" for the whole album.
Exactly. Yeah. I really don't care. Like, if again, as well, in the Underrated band, we will definitely talk about lyrics more, but as as someone generally who doesn't pay attention, I don't mind. It goes very well with the sounds, I thought.
Over underrated.
So moving on to Belfast Child, which was a #1 hit in the UK, which is mad. And you listen to it, you think, how on earth? Well, I guess from the success of the previous album, everyone ran out and bought it. So Street Fighting Years, we kind of mentioned earlier, 1989, produced by Trevor Horn, the
did not expect him to turn up. Yeah.
Although it doesn't sound anything like a Trevor Horn album.
No, exactly.
Like, this is like he asked him to do folk songs. It's like, okay, this is very different to Frank Is for Hollywood. But this song is is talking about troubles. And as I mentioned earlier, he said that he's going through a divorce, and the last thing he wanted to do was write songs about breaking up with Chrissy Hines. So he focused on the big topics, Mandela and global warming and all sorts of. Yeah, this is based on a classic Irish folk song called "She Moved Through the Fair," and then Mick McNeil, Charlie Birchall created this beautiful haunting melody over the top, and it builds and builds and builds and ends with a beautiful Jim Curve line. But there's also a great version on YouTube, and they did this with Sinead O'Connor, which is really, really moving if you can find it.
Okay.
But this album, I can see what if people want to slag off Simple Minds, it'd be this album, because every song is more than 7 minutes. Like the opening track is like 8 minutes, and it's like prog rock, and
Oh yeah, you put the edit at 5:15, so thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to help a little bit. I mean, I hate Mandela Day and Biko on this album, but yeah, I think this is a great song, and probably the last successful song ever. And it's been 35 years, sadly. What are your thoughts?
I remember listening to this song when I was doing my Simple Minds discography exploration and not enjoying it at all. I've got to respect the different sounds, because you cannot fault Simple Minds for that. Like, I think I read somewhere where they're like, some bands it's like they're in a time capsule of their youth and they should evolve with age. And I think that's absolutely what Simple Minds have done, where like some I'm always thinking of Bon Jovi and the Country album, but some bands, when they go into a different sound, they're like, what is the thing now? What is popular? With Simple Minds, it doesn't. It just sounds like they're constantly pushing the boundaries. So I've got to respect that. But I feel that once again, it's A-level politics lyrics. I prefer "Where the Streets Have No Name" by U2 as a song about the Troubles, personally. Because I've just put, this is exactly the kind of stadium sound that I don't like as much. But yeah, having not listened to any album in full apart from New Gold Dream, it was interesting to read that Once Upon a Time was more, quote, had more American soul and gospel influences, whereas this one had acoustic and Celtic folk music. So I was like, all right, like, so it really is, because you only basically have one song from each album. That we're moving at speed between different genres. So yeah, like, does every song sound like this on Street Fighting Blues?
So, like as I said, like there's probably the only thing that sounds slightly commercial is a song called "Kick It In," so I think I may have heard on radio, but a lot of the songs they're not commercial at all. And obviously they did "This Is Your Land" with Lou Reed, which was a single, but it's a considered listen, but it's not going to be on top of the pops. So it's just, I guess it's kind of interesting how they, on purpose, he took a step away from the American sound into something quite uncommercial. But I guess it's huge because like there's a accompanying VHS of them playing us at a stadium in Verona in Italy, and like the Italians go insane for them. And I think I got a feeling that in 1990 they were huge around Europe still, just not America. Don't know how big they are in Belgium, but I know they're big in Italy and Germany.
I would say they're big in Belgium. I mean, Brussels is mentioned in the documentary as like, one of the cities that they visited very early on. And it sounds like they toured pretty relentlessly, and not just in the UK and the US. And I think, Belgium is big on post-punk, I think, and that kind of sound, and would have also been into the more commercial sound.
But then, Mick McNeil left after this tour, who was the keyboard player and, one of the main creative team, because all the songs were written by Birchall, McNeil and Kerr for the first 10 years. So, the band reassessed, continued, and did an album called Real Life, which is basically Street Fighting Years light. So it's got See the Lights and Let There Be Love for the two singles from it, but it's pretty, you can dismiss it quite easily. And then they lost Mel and became just the two of them, and they did an album with She's a River, which you may know, which was a kind of a big single.
No, I don't think so, actually, no.
So after they had two kind of like failed albums, they thought, hey, let's try and get back the dream team. So they brought back Mel Gaynor and Derek Forbes. McNeil didn't attend, and they made an album called Neapolis, 1998. And I thought, they're going to get back to the original sounds, but it was a massive flop. and even as a fan of the band, there's 2 or 3 songs I can even listen to. So I thought I'd pop in War Babies, but it's probably the best of the rest. I don't think it's even released in the USA, because that's how much they fell down literally 9 years since Alive and Kicking. But this song is, it's got like a lush lead synths. It's quite interesting how electronic this album is considering that the member that they're missing is the keyboard player. But I think Charlie was happy to
Yeah, I
take
didn't know
up the
that.
keyboards, and it's got like a little bridge. I guess people called it Belfast Child Part Two because obviously it's mentioning war and turmoil. But I think it's one of the better songs from the 90s. The albums that follow this are probably worse. But yeah, what's your opinion on War Babies?
I prefer this to Belfast Child. I've written that we're back sounding like U2, and I don't mind it. To me, this if you told me this was a U2 song, I would have believed you. Absolutely, like an early 90s U2 song. I love how expansive it is, the bass, the jittering flourishes of synths that come in and out. I really like how it starts building towards the end, but I really don't like how it peters out. This does seem to be a bit of a theme.
There's a video remix which is better, and it has like strings at the end of it. I couldn't find it on Spotify.
Right, okay. Because this is the Dave Bascom mix, which I got to give my obligatory mention of the Dave Bascom remix of Soulwax, Too Many DJs, which was the first alternative single that I remember buying, which went in at number 40 in the UK charts, making that song sound much better. And actually, I posted this song on God's Jukebox today, the music social network that I'm on, being like, I'm discussing this. And someone commented, I lost interest in the minds of the 90s, but this is a great mix. So I would agree.
But yeah, this single flopped. I think it got to number 39 in the charts. So yeah, people did not like Simple Minds in 1998.
I mean, 98, like it's Britpop, isn't it? So it's like, it's not the time for this sound, I think.
It's quite nice how Jim Kerr mentioned that, but people were into Stone Roses and Manchester, so it's fine not to like him. It's quite nice. I mean, it's a nice that he gets it. He gets why they're not going to be the biggest band forever. So then I tried to pick some songs from the later years. I chose a different kind of take. I chose Dolphins from the Black and White album from 050505. It's been said out loud. That comes across as a weird fucking title, but there you go. Yeah, this is the band coming back together, creating a similar sound to the 80s, I guess, but with a modern twist. But this is kind of a more atmospheric, introspective sort of sound. It starts with like a hushed vocal and just some atmospheric keyboards, and then over the time it sort of brings in like guitars and ups and rises, and it's got Jim singing about dolphins bring you down, which we all know can be a thing. But
once again, the deep lyrics that I was expecting.
So yeah, I really like this. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about, but yeah, it just musically it works for me. I think it's a live favorite. And I heard when I saw them live, Anchoress, she was in the band for a little bit.
Yep.
And she sings this with Jim Kerr, which is quite. But unfortunately, I can't find it on Spotify. But what are your thoughts?
I wrote once again. This is like ballady U2 at the beginning, but as the downward arpeggios come in, do you know what it reminded me of? Which really surprised me. I kind of had to go and listen to be like, why? And I don't really know. Blackout by Muse. The song with the do 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 do. It really did. I felt very similar to this one as I did to, was it The American, where like I wasn't really on board the first time, but then the second it buried into me a little bit, but still not as much as I would have liked. I mean, it is quite slow. So I think that kind of thing does take me a little bit longer. And again, I think maybe this is why, a lot of Simple Minds songs aren't as well known, because if you have such immediate hits, if you have songs that you really need to take the time and they're over 5 minutes, I mean, this one is 6 minutes. The later it gets in the time, they're really like, you've put a song from 98 that was way more Britpop. Oh, stupid thumbs up thing. You've put a song, this one's from 2005, just as like the UK indie revival is in full swing. It's not the time for it. I think Simple Minds seem like the kind of band who have extremely dedicated fans who stuck with them. And, let's not forget this is their 14th album. Insane that they've done so much, and insane that like the core group of Charlie and Jim have stayed together. But yeah, I didn't dislike it, but I'm not in a rush necessarily to hear it again. But I must mention the appalling album cover which is just like two hands doing a little heart with some other hands next to them, and I'm like, why? Why?
That
Especially,
seems to be the official Simple Minds thing now. All of the live albums and tours have
I
that
mean,
emblem.
but if Ultra can have the triangle, why not have the heart? But yeah, and I read that the reason why it's 050505, it's because that's when their recording session finished, the 5th of March 2005. Fair enough. But I'm like, but that I think the fact, especially that it doesn't, if it was called like anything to do with love, you're like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, this one is definitely a bit more of a grower.
I mean, they have a couple of like this wasn't a single; it was just an album track. But
Hmm.
yeah, all of the singles I find in the noughties just sound just too obvious. Simple Minds.
Mm,
Um,
by numbers.
you know how like for you two, well, you may not have heard, but you two songs from the past 15, 20 years, they just sound like them just rehashing it. And unfortunately, that is a bit like Simple Minds. And I think this is why I like the song because it was kind of different.
Mm.
This is something I may not have heard before from Simple Minds, so it's quite nice to hear like a bit more refreshing sort of sound than what I'm used to. But yeah, I think the album that all of the fans seem to like is called Big Music from 2014.
Hmm.
So if you wanted to listen to the critically acclaimed album from the past 10 years, give that a go. But like I said, they haven't made a classic album for a long, long time. If I'm bring on to the next song from the
Hmm.
2018 album, this is Sense of Discovery, and this is when they last saw them live. And this, yes, it sounds like Alive and Kicking,
Hmm.
but mainly because of the backing vocals.
That's kind of the point as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. But this is like an anthemic return. It's a new confident lineup. The band are, I guess, getting back to the old ways. But yeah, it's just a blend of ambition, power, and it's a welcome home. It's like I guess it's like a little best of Simple
Mhm.
Minds. So I popped in Sense of Discovery. And again, I'm sorry, this is a long song.
No, it's fun. Again, I like this one a bit more, I would say. I was hooked from the beginning and waiting to see which direction it was going to go in because
Mm,
obviously it's quite a big intro. And the first time I listened, I was like, "Oh, this is going again into slightly melodic U2 territory once again." Really, like for me, having done the U2 episode with you as well, I'm like, yeah, it does sound like a lot of the U2 areas that I didn't know as well. But I didn't mind at all when the bridge sounded like Alive and Kicking Part 2. I think the bass of the song is so lush, like it's such a nice
mm.
atmosphere that it creates, and the drums are phenomenal. In this, I think it really kind of frames the song really nicely. And yeah, we're on their 18th album. They have done a 19th. And I just can't help but be impressed, really. Like, especially when you consider how long they've been going. Like in that documentary, it's really interesting to see like how long they've known each other and they met each other because they lived in the same building, Charlie and Jim. So yeah, I think actually I don't know about the 90s, but given that First You Jump I really liked, and it's from an album that you haven't even put here, Direction of the Heart.
Mm.
Like I think there's for sure a 10 track list of noughties, sorry, 21st century Simple Minds songs that I'm sure between us we could find.
I've got a feeling that was from their first album. That
First You
seems to be
Jump.
like, yeah,
Oh,
from
really? Ah, okay.
Johnny
That's why.
Johnny and the Self Hummers. I think it was that. I think either that or Vision of Light are from the 1978.
Ah, so maybe that's why.
But yeah. There's a song on there with Deletion from
Russell
Sparks.
Moyle. Yeah.
Yes, as well.
Human Traffic. Yeah, I just seen
Yeah,
it.
I mean, a bit like Sparks, I'm just impressed that they've constantly made music because there's a
Mhm.
bands who are who are more successful than they are who release less music over that period. But yeah, they keep going, and he sort of dropped hints occasionally that he might want to leave them behind. But Charlie is all Simple Minds, bless him.
Mhm.
And he comes
Okay.
across as such a humble, shy little sort of guy, doesn't he, Charlie Birchall?
Like so I loved is it when Muriel was looking at herself interviewing him in the tube, but she was just like, he's so cute. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you, girlfriend. Like he's very cute. But I mean, but Jim Kerr is an interesting one because he, he's not your typical rock star. I feel like he's a little bit more savvy and with his head on his shoulders. And I don't mean that in a derogatory or positive
Mm,
way. Like he definitely has a drive. Like the fact that, when they were talking about, they were producing with John Leckie, who was, it was amazing to see him. And like he's produced so many interesting things in the documentary. And they're just pushing back immediately, like, no, we want it to sound like this and that and the other. They clearly had a drive and a vision. Um, But yeah, I expected Jim Kerr to be a bit more of a prick. I think the only thing that I really disagreed with him on was when he was talking about how he invested in the Taormina football team, and because they wore blue, which is what Rangers I imagine
Yeah,
wear,
yeah,
he
yeah.
changed the kit and renamed them Taormina. And I was like, this is very colonialist mindset. What the fuck is this? Like, come on, you're in another country now. Who the hell cares? If anything, embrace both colours. Yeah, that was the biggest decision he made me annoyed about him.
But occasionally appears on like the round table with Steve Lamacq, and he does come across as like he still loves music and he still knows about the industry and stuff. He's not like it doesn't sound like he's got he just stays in this gold mansion and counts his money. He does seem to sort of still have a passion.
Again, in the documentary, they film him talking to his friend who owns a restaurant. And when he came, he was like burnt out and tired. And it was his friend
Mm.
who encouraged him to go and play football with his friends who make music. And it was from him kind of like talking to younger Italian people making music that inspired him again. So maybe he is so open-minded because that's what needed to bring his spot. I mean, they made so many albums between the late 70s and the late 80s. Like to make
Mm.
that many albums and tour that much, to have so much expectation on you as well, I imagine. Like I didn't know they played Live Aid. No idea. No idea they played Live Aid, and that crowd is mad. And as I mean, Bob Geldof is so funny, like talking about, he's like, "Yeah, we're giving you Philadelphia. If you don't want it, fuck off." And like, why the fuck have they started with a new song talking about satellites falling out of the sky? What the hell? Just get on with it. Fuck off. Um, yeah, it was really good. I would say, like, however you feel about Simple Minds, it is a documentary worth watching, especially if you're interested in kind of like, yeah, Scottish British social history. Do you think Simple Minds are overrated? I'll start with you because the question was, I think, for both of us.
Okay, so Simple Minds, the '80s. I think they're probably one of the best bands to create the amount of music and different versions themselves and to be so influential. Definitely, I just think it's a shame that the classic members left. It'd be interesting if Mick McNeil didn't leave in 1990. Where they go? Because I think he was, as Mel Gaynor said, a genius. And it's sad that we never heard that version of Simple
Mm.
Minds. So yeah, for the past 30 years, they have kind of been treading water. Yeah, because they're a great live band, I would go and see them. But it's very rarely ever anything really makes my skin goosebump. So yes and no. I mean, yeah, I just think it's a shame how little people in the UK know about them. And when I grew up, a lot of the Enemy magazines were kind of if someone sounded ambitious, they'd mock them saying, "Oh, they want to be Simple Minds," as if that's a really bad thing. And I think there's a history that needs to be learnt. And I think maybe with bands like the Horrors, kind of like saying that they're influenced by them has helped a little bit.
Are they?
So
Mm.
yeah, especially when they had the second album, they said they were influenced by Empires of Dance.
Mm.
So that kind of helped. So yeah, in the middle. I mean, they have sold a shitload of albums, but I imagine that's mainly in the last 5 years of the '80s. What about you?
This has been one of the most difficult ones, I have to
Mm.
say. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say until it comes to the end because, you gave the figures at the beginning, 60 million albums, 9 million listeners. From this playlist, like there were very few songs I didn't know that I was like, wow, these are amazing. If you'd basically whacked on New Gold, I'd be like, yes, underrated. Here we go. So on the one hand, I'm prone to say overrated because I'm like the continuing, which sounds awful, but it's kind of like the continuing success they have. I'm like, I don't think the quality of the music has kind of kept up. But I think I would say overrated, but I would say um they are a band that shouldn't just be known for the hits that they are.
Mm.
They deserve to have their back catalogue a bit more explored. I think we can make several 10-track playlists of different decades and come up with the stuff that's astounding. They have made,
Yeah,
as I said,
definitely.
19 albums. Um, but it is quite astonishing how, I mean, yeah, you were talking about them treading water. I'm like, well, are they really treading water that much if they've got that many monthly listeners? Like, that's going to be a band that whenever they tour, they're going to have like people from all over. Because yeah, what did I put? Yeah, I think the top city is London, but then you have two Australian cities and two South American cities in the top five, right? So it's like they're
Oh,
not
wow.
just a UK concern or an American concern. So yeah, it's like I think very, very reluctantly I say overrated, but that actually doesn't mean I don't think you should go and listen to the playlist that Fran made or do a bit of further listening going on the albums of the songs that you like.
That's the end of part one.
Do you like music? Do you like podcasts? Chances are you like music podcasts. Take this one for example, Pick a Disc, where every fortnight a guest comes on to talk about an album for whatever reason they want to. Sometimes I like it, sometimes perhaps even something else other than just like it. You just listen to the podcast and find out. We talk about the album, we talk about the songs, we talk about the artists, we talk about tangent things that are slightly related, and sometimes we deviate off tangents. But don't worry, we'll always bring it back in the end. But you can find us on all your social medias and all the podcast apps for searching for Pick a Disc. You can also find us on the part of the Weedig Podcast Network under Linktree/Weedig Podcasts. And until then, happy listening to all those discs that you are picking. Goodbye.
Underrated.
So the next pick we chose was Idlewild. I think maybe because I kind of got the impression that you didn't really know them that well.
Not at all.
And I was a bit surprised. Obviously, they were kind of a noughties indie sensation for a couple of years. So so I thought, well, let's deliver a Idlewild playlist. So I did a similar thing to Simple Minds. I chose the songs from basically each album. Obviously, they've done a lot less albums than Simple Minds. It's easy
Only
to
9.
But yeah, I think Idlewild, they never expected to be famous, more like a fun project for some guys. Roddy Womble, great name. He was the drummer, and then he got persuaded to be the front man, but he never wanted to be a front man. He's shy as fuck. If you see him live, he stands to the side when there's no vocals.
Oh,
and he sometimes puts his hands in his coat and just stares at the floor. It's quite. I mean, it's an interesting tactic. And then, like when they were in the 90s, he basically would jump around as much as possible just because he was scared. But he always came across as quite sweet. They were influenced by bands like the hardcore bands like Black Flag, Minor Threat. They're more American focused than a lot of the UK bands, maybe into Pavement. But by the time I got into them, it was 100 Broken Windows, and they had kind of a bit more Smiths influence, a bit more REM. And I remember, I think it's a lazy term, but when someone asked me what they sound like, I said, "Oh, they kind of sound like the Foo Fighters mixed with REM," because he's well read, he has similar lyrical themes as REM. I guess he has the same sort of shyness as Michael Stipe, but then you have these big guitars and drums from the rest of the band. But I just find it really interesting because obviously from 2000 to 2002, we kept hearing that they're doing quite well in America. And in the early noughties, other than UK bands were doing fuck all in America. They toured with Pearl Jam. They said in an interview that Eddie Vedder would come out with an acoustic guitar, do one Pearl Jam song, and then say, "Everyone stay," because you have to listen to Idlewild. Which is quite a nice thing to do to support bands. And they said they paid to the biggest gigs. And then they're going to do an MTV tour, but Rod, the guitar player, broke his hand and had to cancel the tour. And they reckon they never came back.
That is unfortunate.
They were signed to EMI and said that in EMI Europe, none of the A&I guys knew what to do because they're used to having pop bands and they didn't know how to sell Idlewild. So basically, apart from the UK, America was their only hope because they signed to Capitol in America. So when they lost America, they basically only had the UK. And they carried on with an independent label for 2 albums, and then they basically did a announcement saying that we don't think that the UK really needs another Idlewild album, and they walked away.
Wow! Imagine the actual band doing that. Incredible.
They said no one needs an Idlewild album, so the idea was that they're going to do the solo stuff. And then apparently every time they did the solo album, people kept asking for Idlewild songs. So they kind of thought, okay, fuck it, we did another Idlewild album. So they came back and did 2 albums and not done anything for, I think, 5-6 years now since the last album. But yeah, so anyway, I sprinkled some of the songs across their discography. So yeah, do you know any Idlewild songs at all or anything?
I do. So I think I might have mentioned it before. I really like their song, which I was sad that you didn't put on the playlist, Modern Way of Letting Go. I really like that song.
It was on the playlist until the last minute.
Well, I'll talk about it because I think I have a feeling that I discovered that. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that song was put on a free CD that I got with Q Magazine. I have a feeling that I didn't come across it any other, like as in it wasn't on the radio, it wasn't on music TV, it was something like that. So I knew they were Scottish. I knew the lead singer was called Roddy. I knew one of the songs that you put on this playlist, and that is it. That is literally what I knew because they were one of those bands where I possibly, tried to listen to a bit more of the remote part where Modern Way of Letting Go comes from. Wasn't really into it. So I just never kind of bothered. I found it interesting that Wikipedia said that their sound developed from an edgy and angular sound, and that was described by the enemy as the sound of a flight of stairs falling down a flight of stairs to a sweeping melodic rock. And I was like, uh-oh, sweeping melodic rock. This might not be. I mean, I had a feeling that some of it might not be up my street, but it was. Let's say it's more of a mixed bag than I thought it would be, for sure. For sure, there were really some surprises here that I was not expecting already, starting with the first song.
American English was a big hit, which was a sweeping U2 sounding song, which I didn't put on here, but you may have heard that. That and You Held Your World in Your Arms Again were the two big songs from the remote part. Self Healer from the 1998 mini album Captain. It's got like that raw punk influence sound. It's catchy, short. It does sound like a sixth form band having a catchy hit. Yeah, it's urgent, angsty. Roddy's vocals are really high and whiny, and sound nothing like he did 5 years later on. But it's just, I think it's a pretty decent single. There's a lot of people out there who think this is the best album. The band fucking hate it. That they said
really
they're embarrassed with the first album because said this is not who we are now. So it's quite interesting how so many of their diehard fans adore their 90s material. But what do you think of Self Healer?
I loved it. I was like, Fran's put in some shouting and some louder guitars to appease me, and I really appreciate it. Although it's not just that, right? There are some quieter bits mixed in, which I enjoyed. My only critique is that the drums could be more complex. It's just like hitting, like I feel like I could play that drum line, and if I'm saying that, you have a problem because I am absolutely shite at drums.
That is what it is, though. It just sounds like a sixth form band doing their first single. They can't really play yet, which is why they're shouting.
But yeah, given this was a band where, like I said, for me, their biggest hit is You Held the World in Your Arms Tonight. I was like, what? What on earth is this? Way more emo, screamo than I imagined. And I was like, okay, well, very often, we actually didn't really talk about this in Simple Minds, but very often Scottish acts aren't really singing their own accent, right? Or, they're kind of toning down the accent a little bit. But he actually said that he was kind of doing an American accent on purpose because he was deeply into Tom Barman from Dios, and he was like, well, I know he's Belgian, but he's singing in an American accent, and I thought if he could do it, so could I. So that is why he's sounding American, because of a good old Belgian band. The lyrics mean absolutely nothing, but I like the sound of singing songs to alibis. The song is a beautiful lie, difficult for someone to say, I'm sure, and myself. But I was like, okay, I'm really glad you actually started the playlist with this, because I was like, right, I think I've underestimated them, and it's going to be much more complex than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. So we move on to Idea track from 100 Broken Windows, which is where I first came across them. And for me, I was still a bit put off by how loud they were.
Yeah.
Looking back, it seems like really, but I think at the time I was like 19, and I was probably into like indie. This was a bit more shouty, and I thought, oh wow. And this is like such an odd sort of sounding song. So it literally was an Idea track. Which is why he kept singing the line, the Idea track. And then it goes into like, is it Hugh Miller, who's a creationist? His lyrics are so fucking strange. Like he just mentioned like random poets, random authors. You've got no context to why he's mentioning that. And then I just love the disjoint guitars, but it just has these yelping sections, this catchy anthemic sections. Then at the end it has like,
I don't know what it says, but it's basically strings with like a spoken word part.
Yeah. And it's like, what has hit me? You get like 3 minutes of like 5 snippets of songs just all jammed together, and I love it. And it's they were like quite not really experimental, the same with Simple Minds, but they're doing a lot more with guitars than many other British bands I was listening to back in 2000. What are your thoughts?
So I do remember the album cover for 100 Broken Windows, but for some reason in my mind, it came after Remote Part, because I thought Remote Part was their first album. So to hear that they had 2 albums before, I was like, okay, right. It's just, I guess that's the one that kind of broke them. So when it started, I was like, all right, okay, we're going to more melodic. And I was like, oh, no, hang on. Oh, we've still got some screaming. I appreciate the screaming, but the harmonies sound great. Their juxtaposition with the screaming, and I think now that you know that they like Deus, I think the strings, especially at the end, and the spoken word poem, I'm like, okay, that's what they're getting. But again, I have this comment on quite a few songs. I think it fades out way too early, which I guess, because I like it, it does leave me wanting a bit more. But yeah, I enjoyed this from the beginning. Really enjoyed really listening to it, and I was surprised to see that they were touring with Muse around this time, because this would have been this was like in between Showbiz and Origin of Symmetry Muse, which is not. I mean, Muse were also really famously into Deus as well, but maybe that's how they bonded. I don't know how, but I would have not put those two bands together.
And at that time, you probably would have banked on Idlewild being the bigger band. So
Absolutely, much more mainstream. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So anyway, so I've jumped around a little bit with this. So I've moved on to On Another Planet from the comeback album 2015 from Everything Ever Written. And yeah, this is a band who's been away for 7 years. Different lineup changes. I really like the shimmering guitars. I like how the voice and drums just kick in, and it sort of like starts off that spidery guitar riff. I guess it's kind of the closest they came back to maybe the sound of 100 Broken Windows. I know you're not a big fan of melodic rock, but it has enough Scottish edge, I think, to be a slightly different. Weirdly, this wasn't a single. I think it should be in the first single, because it's sort of like raised its hand saying, "Hey, look at us, Idlewild are back." But they chose the first song on the album, which is a weird fucking choice. Saw them play at the Roundhouse in London. I adored that gig.
How come?
I haven't seen the band for like 8 years, and I assume they wouldn't ever see them again. Having new members helped out a lot, and also they did lots of rework versions of the first album, like A Film of the Future and other songs I never thought I'd hear. Like, when like a band had been away for a long time, you kind of need it for the fans to like remember how good they were, and everyone was so happy to see them.
That's a really nice feeling.
Yeah. And you could tell that the band were bored over by how grateful everyone was that they're back on stage. So yeah, it's not the greatest song of all time, but I thought I'd give you a snippet of their new material. Yeah,
this song left me with mixed feelings, because I thought it was such a promising beginning. I really loved the wall of sound created by the guitars. I love how his voice, I've written, sounds like both versions of Alex Turner's voice. Like the earlier voice and the crooner voice. Have a listen again, because it really, somewhere in between. And like, I mean, I feel like, especially given the wild date distance between the songs, it sounds completely different in every song I've listened to so far. I enjoyed when it slowed down, but the drums are still very simple, and it didn't deliver. Like, I couldn't really figure out why it didn't really. There's another song on the playlist as well where I was like, I listened to it 2 or 3 times and just had kind of no opinion, which is weird. And I kind of, with all the songs today, like I made sure to kind of look up the albums and see if that provided a bit more of a clue as to maybe why I felt. And this one was produced by the guitarist Rod Jones, and he said, "I'm a big fan of Wilco and Jeff Tweedy, and those are 2 bands that I know absolutely nothing about." And he's saying, like, I'm a big fan of how their records are so much lower than other people's, not in terms of volume, but in terms of tone. I like to think of them as thick, like a nice thick broth. It's a strange analogy, but that's the one we use. And I was like, okay, this is going way over my head, and I don't know the musical references, so maybe if I did, I would enjoy it a bit more.
The album had a lot more Americana in it, so obviously I knew it was
not usually a fan
for you.
Yeah,
both albums are frustrating, because it does sound like a band trying to do too much, unfortunately. It's like you have like 2 or 3 songs for the rockier fans, the 2 or 3 songs for the folky fans, then like they're kind of like Americana sort of like inspectors sort of material. So, but it is what it is. So moving on to the biggest hits you held at the world from 2002's Remote Part, which I would say is probably their best album. Like I said, I almost put on Modern Way of Letting Go, because I knew that sounded like a Babs song.
Absolutely, great song.
This is like a massive leap forward. It sounds like a band wanting to get big. It's got strings in it. It's got ambition as to who stepped forward. It was played everywhere. I think it's their only top 10 single. And yeah, I think everyone thought, oh, okay, this band are going to be as big as Coldplay. And then that was it. They followed us up with American English, which is, how Rose like had another song about America.
Yeah, it really is such a cliche, and I'm like, get over it. I want to hear life in Nicaragua or something like that. Just literally any other country, please.
I think it's like, hey, American might play this on the radio for much.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I get it as well. Like, I hadn't been to America in until I was 23, I think. And then when I went for like a really long time. And you're like, oh gosh, it really is like you're in a film set or something like that. Like it is always going to be a
Mm.
romantic country, even with what's going on now. And I think if you're a rock fan, you're going to be drawn to that. But it's like very rarely when a band goes in that direction does it sound better than their original stuff. Anyway.
And it didn't work because I think I watched what he's saying about the record label wouldn't push them around this time. They kind of lost interest. So they played to New York and they played to like 500 people. And then they traveled like for 6 hours to Houston and played to 8 people.
Oh,
It was
wow.
seriously, it was a
Oh.
slog. So yeah, they supported Coldplay. Then I think they kind of like knew that they weren't going to be big anymore. I think they got dropped after that. So yeah, what are your thoughts on You Held the World?
This was the only song I knew on the playlist, and I hadn't revisited it in a while because I felt it was quite overplayed at the time, which I'm like, what does that mean? I was like in 2002, I was in Luxembourg, but I don't know. I guess it was just like on an indie playlist, it would be on there. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed revisiting it. I think the strings are absolutely gorgeous and go so well with the rock instruments I put with the
Oh
guitar.
yes.
Um, the title of the song and the way that it's sung, yeah, it's really lush and you really visualize it. And I think yeah, it's a folk indie classic. Yeah, it's a song where it's funny because I said, like New Gold Dream, I really like that song and yet had forgotten bits of it.
Mm.
This song, I feel like it is exactly how I remembered it, but I appreciated it much more this time around with a bit of distance.
And so, following up with the remote part, they did warning promises, and they had the option of repeating themselves or doing something completely different. So they did something completely different, and they brought out "Love Steals Us from Loneliness," and we
Hmm.
went down the Scottish folk vibe.
Hmm.
And this was 4 to 5 years before Mother and Sons, when no one wanted to hear Roddy Womble with his new long hair singing in the folk, singing with acoustic guitars. And this was played everywhere. This was played everywhere.
See, I didn't know this. This is Love Steals Us from Loneliness, right?
It's got that which was radio friendly hit, and I quite like the spiteful lyrics. Happy birthday, are you lonely? Yeah, but yeah, so this was like, oh, this isn't the modern way of letting go, and this is probably one of the fastest songs on the album. So it literally killed half the fan base, basically dead. And then yeah, they got dropped after this. But it's got some great moments in it, and they said that even the band was struggling with the album. What direction are we a folk band, are we a rock band? And I think like 2 of the members quit during that time as well, so it wasn't a great era. I saw them supporting REM, and by then the Zootons were higher up on the list, and they had just released a debut album. It was Idlewild, then the Zootons, then REM. I was like, really? Idlewild have already fallen behind the Zootons. They've only been out
Wow, yeah.
for 1 year. That's how far they dropped.
Mhm.
After this, next to my sword was playing to 200 people in Southampton. I was like, 2 years ago, the enemy was saying you're going to be bigger than Coldplay. I felt a bit sorry for him, but I guess it's down to so many factors, and also the fact that Waddy Womble's not a natural frontman. He comes across as really shy and awkward. There's a Pop World interview,
Oh, I've been watching
and
Pop
and
World,
and, and you just see him he's just like smiling and squirming and looking at the floor the entire
I mean,
time.
with those two as well, like, because you know that Mikita Oliver and Lily Allen have a podcast
Mm,
now. That Lily
mm,
Allen's going through it again. Bless her. I feel so sorry. That woman has gone through it a lot. So yeah, there's been a few kind of guest hosts, and Simon Amstell was one of them. And like, it's funny because I was quite young when I watched Pop World, and I just presumed Mikita and Simon Amstell hated each other. I thought they
mm.
absolutely hated each other just because they were so sarcastic. And I just hadn't seen a dynamic like that in my life, and I was
Yeah,
still a
yeah, yeah.
child, so it's not like I had sort of bants with my friends in that way. But it's like, oh no, like they had chemistry. It was a weird fucking chemistry, and it's been so fun to watch old Pop World clips.
But yeah, I thought you may not like the song, but I wanted you to hear all the different versions
Yeah, no,
of the band.
I did not really like this song. But I was shocked at how much his voice sounded like Michael Stipe. It really,
Mm.
really, and I hadn't, I don't think, read up until this point the kind of the comparisons with REM or even that they toured with REM. And yeah, like it is quite ironic because you would think that a sound like this then would be much more popular in the US because, as REM is, because
Mm.
I feel like REM in the UK, obviously they've got their big fans, but again, people will know sort of the bigger hits. I can appreciate the complexity of the harmonies. They often have beautiful, beautiful harmonies. But what I absolutely appreciate is the lyrics. Oh my God, please, may I have a moment to read out
You may.
the lyrics? My anger is a form of madness, so I'd rather have hope than sadness. And you said something stupid like, love steals us from loneliness. Happy birthday. Are you lonely yet? I misplaced your face in the shape of a smile on a night that could never surprise me. Don't tell me you're afraid of the past. It's only the future that didn't last. You're kidding yourself. You're going nowhere and you're going there fast. Pew, 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 pew. Booyaka, booyaka. Like, wow. Wow. Fucking brutal. Loved it. Absolutely love those lyrics. Would love like a completely different band to cover this song and give it a completely different sound.
Well, I know in the same era we had My Chemical Romance who could have sang that sort of lyric.
Yeah, yeah, and emo as well, right? So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, he's a very well-read, young Scottish guy, and one of the main things you see at concerts would be support your local poet. That was their
oh,
merchandise.
lovely, lovely.
Which is semi-pretentious, I think, when I was like a 21-year-old, but I think he means it. Hence,
Well, there's two songs coming up.
yeah.
Yeah, he's putting his money where his mouth is, but yeah, but not quite yet.
Over underrated.
Continuing with the slow songs, I played the final song from the last album, Interview Music, which is Lake Martinez, which is a lake in America.
Of course.
They brought back the same producer as Remote Parts, Ringer, and this is just a different sounding song. It was really unexpected. It's like a piano lullaby. It's got tranquil melodies. It's a bit reminiscent to Asleep by the Smiths, if you know that song.
I don't, but I will check out.
I love the repetitive wordplay and the sudden stops and starts. It's really pleasant, and I just wanted to show a different side of Idlewild that people may not know. But yeah, it's quite slow. We have to give it maybe 3 or 4 listens to like it. But what do you think?
See, yeah, this song, I was like, I'm quite enjoying. I was really enjoying it right up until the chorus. I was like, here's a gear shift. It's just the piano voice. It sounds beautiful. But I think because you put it just after the love steals us from loneliness, when he's singing about loneliness here, it sounds extremely cringe. Like I think it's because it's so melodic. And then the lyrics are like, you pick up on the lonely loneliness of the people around you, but you don't know what they're really thinking. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, is this the same band? And then they used to go like Lake Martinez, Lake Michigan. I was like, Jesus Christ, like this seems like again, it's a bit too harsh to say AI generated, but it's just like, let's pick different elements. Let's go for a ballad and let us talk about America. I think the stop starts I didn't pick up on, but you're right that's quite well done. But I the chorus really lets it. I really enjoy everything but the chorus, and yeah. So you almost had me, Fran. You almost had me with a piano ballad, but not quite. Not. But this was easily my least favorite on the list. So
it's sad that he waited with lyrics because that's usually his strong point.
Yeah, I know. What happened?
Roddy.
What happened? Bad day.
So moving on to something a bit heavier,
Yeah.
we're going back to 100 Broken Windows with Rose Ability, which looking back at the time, I was like, oh, this is too much for me. But now it's like, what? So yeah, so as I said before, it sounds like REM meets the Foo Fighters. How many singers were out there name checking Gertrude Stein in 2000? It's a song about not being satisfied. I like the direct drum patterns, the call and response guitars and vocals.
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd single, but it works. It's amazing live. It's got that sudden jump and chorus, which makes you fucking want to go for it. And in the video, he wears a stripy jumper. So when I was going to see him live, those people were wearing the same stripy jumper.
Oh, lovely.
And then moshing down the front. So there wasn't many guys wearing stripy jumpers in rock bands in 2000. So
yeah. Also, you're gonna get sweaty with a jumper on in the mosh pit.
Yeah, I'm sure they're topless. I'm sure it was a jumper onto their skin. So the rash from the sweat, goodness me.
Oh, dearie me. I hope you got some cream for that.
So are you a fan of Rose Ability?
I am a fan of Rose Ability. I thought we're in a much more interesting sound. It reminded me of good old Cooper Temple Claws when it started, because I thought it was a bit that kind of like almost psychedelic vocals, but with the indie guitar sound that I really liked. especially as it went on, the electric guitars really ramp it up. And the singing back of the I know that's not enough now. I think to some ears
Mm.
it could sound a bit annoying, but I enjoyed it. I think it worked. The only thing that annoys me is how abruptly it finishes because it's a song that has a lot going on, and I think
Mm.
they could have eked it a bit more, had a bit more of a an interesting ending. But it really made me think like if I'm going to listen to them, I think I need to go and listen to 100 Broken Windows.
Definitely, I'd say it's that and Remote Part 2 are both 4.5 out of 5 albums. Seriously, give it a listen. There are some quiet moments on it, but like when it hits hard, that it's really
Hmm.
it kills it. And, yeah, it's a shame. It's kind of a lost classic. So going back to the 90s, this was probably the biggest hit from the debut album, When I See Shapes. I argue, When I See Shapes. Again, back to the punky pop teenager Roddy jumping around, making some sort of catchy noise. It's got some hooks, it's got bounding drums, it's got his Atlantic whiny vocal.
Hmm.
I love the bridge. I love like the tom sounds. Yeah, I mean, do you see shapes when you argue, Babs?
So this was almost the reverse journey for me as Lake Martinez because well, firstly, I was surprised that I didn't know the song and it is one of their most well-known songs. And I went on such a journey because it started and I was like, oh, it's a little bit melodic. But then it went to the bridge and it went way more angular and I was like, whoa. Then there were yelps and I was like, whoa, what's going on? There's suddenly some frantic guitar playing and slide ups. And then I especially love the Beastie Boys shouting of shapes. So I would personally like to take the song apart and put it back together because again, I think just the sequence is wrong here. Like I think it has lots of different elements that I like. By like the third listen, I was on board, but it's not a favorite yet. Like I think it could get there. I think I need maybe even more listens to get into it. But there's something really interesting going on there, I thought. But what blew my mind because this is from Hope is Important, right?
Mm.
And it said, or on Wikipedia, it said, described as a punk and grunge album, Hope is Important was compared to Bleach by Nirvana. And I'm like, I cannot hear that
No.
at all. What are you talking about? Like, Bleach had kind of like one. I love Bleach. It's maybe my favorite Nirvana album, but it's like it is one sound. It is one very concrete sound, and this is not doing it. So I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, I listened to this 3 or 4 times. I need a few more to form a proper opinion.
Yeah, so that album's After Love, like Warnings, Promises, people kind of put as like the lost years when they changed labels and they felt like they didn't know what to do.
Hmm.
So this was the first album with a new label. Is it Make It Competition? I can't remember what it's
Make
called.
Another World is what I've got.
Make Another World, and it had like 2 or 3 kind of like more poppy rocky songs. You can see they're trying to get back to the remote part, but it didn't feel natural. They made a decision, which I think backfired, that they would create a more rocky pop album, and then Roddy would go away with the rest of the band and do a solo album of acoustic songs.
Hmm.
And they'd say, looking back, they should have put the best songs of his acoustic onto here and made a better album rather than just concentrating on like just rock and pop songs when only 4 or 5 are decent. Finish It Remains is what I've chosen. It wasn't a single. It's the last song on the album. But I don't really know why. I think you may not love it because it's kind of like a rousing melodic guitar song. But I just love the imagery. And I love when he says, when we're looking at, gravestones or films of us leaving, and then like the synths come in and an atmospheric guitar comes along. And then he does this really earnest like end vocal. And then Rod does this weird like gymnastic sort of like guitar playing underneath it for the past minute, and it sort of like soars, and then it's sort of like and he screams "Leave me, gone," and then it just sort of ends. It's just a beautiful song, and like I can't find them doing it live on YouTube or anything, and people never talk about it. I'm like, how is this not mentioned ever? For me, it's like it's a really like ambitious, like earnest, like track for bands like, I guess, Coldplay or maybe Arcade Fire would sing. But I think it's a lost
Arcade
classic.
Fire is a good shout. Yeah.
Mm.
So this is the other song that just actually kind of didn't make any impact on me. And like I listened to it twice. And so normally like unless I'm out and about, but that's quite rare. Normally, when I'm listening to music with this podcast, I'm like listening to it at my computer and kind of typing as I go, kind of typing my thoughts as they come. That's why quite often it is sort of linear, right? Where I'm like, oh, it starts like this and goes like this. And I had nothing. And I was like, right, okay, well, I'm gonna have to listen to this a third time and see if I can come up with something. And the only thing I came up with was that I liked the ending. I quite liked that how it breaks down and there's like quite nice sustained note. I thought it was fine. I hadn't read the lyrics. I looked them up as you were talking, and actually, yeah, I agree with you. They're quite nice. It's simple but very nice, and like you say, it's a very nice imagery of watching a film shown on
Mm.
gravestones. But I was just like, yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Like normally, I do have an opinion, but
So there you go. So again, I tried to spread the songs over the albums,
mm,
and I then thought, how do I finish this? Do I hit you with another big single,
mhm.
or do I play the song that the band will always end the set list with since the remote part? So I did that. So this is the remote part from the remote part, and it's got a folky acoustic sort of song that then suddenly hits into like a shoegaze 3 minutes with a Scottish poet, Edwin Morgan, talking about Scottish fiction over the top of it. And then when you see them live, the band go on for ages, adding lots of like fire and adrenaline. And then, Roddy will put his coat on and walk off stage, leaving the band to it. But yeah, again, I think people would always go ape shit for this when I see them live. So maybe I'm putting it on there because I can imagine them playing it live rather than the album version. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the remote part?
Well, Fran, I think this is a perfect
Ah,
closer of a playlist. And I was like, I wrote this must be the song they finish with.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
By the third listen, I was crying. That's how much it affected me.
Wow.
Like,
What's it like?
well, I think it's the lyrics. It's not
Oh,
just
okay.
it's not just the lyrics. I think, it is a song in two parts, right? And normally acoustic guitars, I'm a bit kind of fussy, but I really love the acoustic guitars in the first part.
Mm,
His voice dominates a little bit too much over it. I would say it's my only criticism, but the harmonies then save it, and it goes
mm,
so sweet. And then the Scottish fiction part, I just think the instrumentals are astonishing. They're kind of unstoppable driving,
mm.
and then the poem on top. I was just like, what is this song? Like, how can I have not heard? Like, I know two other songs from this album. Like American English, I can't really remember. I probably heard it before,
Mm,
but
mm.
I was like, this is fucking. This is astonishing. I was like crying at 2:45 p.m. today, Fran, listening to this, preparing for it. That's not what I expected at all. So thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time or want to go into. I literally wrote out all the lyrics and did like a little like what I think it's about. And yeah, like I don't know, I just felt even more moved when I found out about the poet who does so he wrote the poem especially for this song
Yeah,
as he
yeah.
was dying. He was, gay and like a legend, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so emotional. He's writing about the refugees, and like it really, really affected me in a way that I wasn't expecting it. Like this, this is not usually my fare. And I don't normally pay attention to lyrics, but I adored this, and I definitely want to seek it out live, because it must be quite astonishing. Like, yeah, it really, really moved me, and I was not expecting it. So thank you.
That's good. Yeah, Roddy is very, very proud of being Scottish. And I remember, like, I guess not frustrated, but obviously when the referendum came, he was very much on the vote out. And obviously, as a fan of like
Mm.
Britain's, don't leave us Scotland, you know.
See,
But
but
I get
I
it
do
because
get
I know,
it.
but also he lives in like rural Scotland. He lives
Mhm.
in the Shetlands. He like collects photographs of like I think like Victorian women from the Shetland Islands. Like
Okay, I'm glad you said
that
from the
I
shop.
mean, his
To
hobbies
look
are
at their
yeah.
ankles.
Like he adores Scotland so much and its
Yeah.
heritage, and he's a proper
Mhm.
Scottish guy. So him having his poem, you can see what it means to the band, and
Yeah, and I read that. So when Edwin died, he left £1 million
mm,
to the SNP. So he
wow,
was it was and he was a very politically
he had a
influential
million
guy.
pounds.
He had
Surprising.
£1 million. I think he was like the Scottish equivalent of the Scottish poet laureate.
But yeah, I'm glad that you enjoy it, and I think it's the perfect way to end the playlist.
Yeah, and if you want my poetry analysis, well, guys, you're gonna have to send me money. But no, really, I because I was really into English. Like I almost studied English, but then went for psychology. And I think it's been a long time since I've actually kind of sat down with two poems for me, because it's like two songs with two different meanings. But it's just, literally the way that I'll just do like the opening two lines are in the beginning there were answers, then they came along and changed, which for me is quite clearly about like, there was religion and now we're in something else. And so like, what is humanity? Where do our
Mm,
morals come from? what is good and wrong, and that's what this whole song is about. And Scottish friction, Scottish. I'm astonished. I'm astonished. What can I say? Excellent.
It isn't in the castles. It isn't in the mist. It isn't. Yeah, I remember.
It isn't.
Yeah,
It isn't.
yeah. There you go. Yeah. So Idlewild, are they over or underrated?
So, do you know what? Until this song, I was like, oh my God, am I going to be a bitch and call a band with 70,000 monthly listeners like just rated, like yeah, whatever. But no, I think now that I know about the existence of this song, and I think if you had put a modern way of like, I think a modern way of letting go is a perfect pop rock song. Really
I think
perfect.
if I put the first 3 albums on, I think you'd enjoy it more.
Yeah.
But I had to kind of show that.
No, but I'm glad you did as well, because I mean that's the point of this, right? And I think I wasn't expecting to like anything else from the remote part, because like I said, I'd kind of grown a bit bored of You Held the World and anything else I listened to. So this is why I really enjoy doing this podcast, because I did not expect to cry over Roddy Woomble at 2:45 p.m. in February 2025. So there we go.
I'm sure he'd be very happy to hear that. But yeah, it's two very different bands. I'm such a fan of Scottish music more than Wales and more than England. The amount of bands they have in Scotland, the hit rate is far higher than any of the other British countries, including England. I would say. I don't know what it is in the water. Is it the rain? Is it the cold?
Is it like the culture? I just you do feel that Scotland it feels like a more arty country overall. Like, of course, England is as well, but not every. Whereas in Scotland, again, watching that Simple Minds documentary, seeing how important the library was to Simple Minds, how when they started when they saw David Bowie, that awakened something in them, so they started going to a theater, a theater that was clearly affordable for them to be able to go to. I think that was super interesting. So yeah,
I think you're right. I think in England, I think people mock you if you go to the library or you're learned. Maybe because like they think you're posh or something and look down at you. I think maybe in Scotland, like where they look down at people who want to read or want to be into art. I think maybe that's the impression I get.
I think it might have been literally today. I think it might have been Josie Long, famous lefty, but I could be wrong. But someone on Instagram today shared something which was like, the old kind of like proletariat tradition of educating yourself has kind of gone a little bit. I think it was something being like, this group of people would, have like reading books that they would share among people, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, given now that there's social media, I don't see that as like, okay, guys at the factory, like let's all have like a reading group or go to the library or something like that. Maybe it's a very callous stereotype. But I just feel like of the nature of the world that we're in today, that is probably not going to happen as much or in the same way in groups that traditionally would. Because I mean, I think as an outsider, Britain as a whole, I would say, does actually feel like a country. It is a country that loves quiz shows, in a way that I really don't see anywhere else. So there is a kind of like, yeah, appreciation of knowledge, maybe. But you're right that like, yeah, if you're too bookish and you come from a certain background, you're going to be a bit teased. But yeah, I don't know. Write in, guys. Write in with a better class analysis than the two of us.
So, another episode of Scotland ended. Will there be another return? Who knows?
Who knows? We'll have to see. Any final thoughts, Fran?
We're all fucked in Europe. Apart from that,
and the US.
Yeah, we're all going to be invaded by Russia and America.
Yeah, but quite honestly, like people I know have started talking about war might be coming. Like, my dad came over, and it is over actually. I've abandoned him to come and do this, but I'm going out for dinner with him afterwards. And he was over recently, and we discussed about going out for dinner. And I was like, oh, like it's fine. I've got enough stuff to cook. And he's like, but Barbara, a war might come, and I think we should appreciate. And I was like, fucking it. But I was like, yeah, you know what? Who knows? Who knows what's happening? And so I guess the message is, all art is political in some way. Support your artists, support the messages. Build your community, stick with your community against the hate, because it's very cliche, and I feel very Jim Carrey at the moment of like, yeah, people power, bringing people together.
Support your local poet.
See you then.
Sure. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please check out Early Simple Minds. You may discover some amazing things, although I'm not promising any miracles. Oh god. If you have any topics or you want to discuss anything about the podcast, you can do so by chatting to us on social media. We are on Instagram at @overunderatedmusicpod. We are also on Blue Sky at oumusicpod.bsky.social, and you can send an old-fashioned email to overunderatedmusicpod@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Subscribe, tell your friends and all that jazz. And remember, la 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 la.